All right, so today we're going to be setting up proportions and solving them. So let's look at this first one here. It says Rocket Sprockets Tool Company manufactures 25 sprockets every 15 minutes. So I'm just going to underline some important things here. 25 sprockets, 15 minutes. And I'm just going to stop there because already I can set up my labels and my original ratio. So I can see, what I see first is I see sprockets. So I'm going to go in the order which I see it. So I'm going to label sprockets. And then it says 15 minutes. So I'm going to label my minutes. So not only am I labeling in order, I'm going to put my numbers in the order that I see my labels. So I see 25 sprockets. So I'm going to put my original ratio of the 25 next to my sprockets. And it says every 15 minutes. So I'm going to put the 15 next to the minutes. Now we need to set up the new ratio. And it says, at this rate, how many sprockets can you make in 2 hours? Well, notice hours is not my label. Minutes is my label. So I need to convert 2 hours to minutes. So I know that there's 60 minutes equals 1 hour. So since I have 2 hours, I would just double that or multiply it by 2. So 60 times 2 is 120 minutes. Okay, so my 120 is going to go next to my minutes, and X is going to go above the 120 next to the sprockets because I want to know how many sprockets I can make in 120 minutes. All right, so now I'm going to do some math. We're going to solve. And so here we're just going to set up our proportion, and the next one we're going to actually solve our answer. So let's use scale factor. Let's ask ourselves, how do we get from 15 to 120? Okay, 15 times 8 is 120. So remember, this is our scale factor. Whatever we do to the bottom, we must also do to the top. So 25 times 8 is 200. So the value of X is 200. So now that I know X is 200, I'm going to go to my next slide. Question number 2. And I'm going to fill in 200 sprockets. Pretty simple. All right, let's try another one. It says the ratio of aspen trees to ponderosa pine trees in the forest is 12 to 16. All right, I'm going to label my key things. I have aspen trees to ponderosa pine trees. Okay, 12 to 16. Okay. I'm going to stop after my first sentence because my first sentence is going to help me set up a lot. I see here that, aspen is said first. So we're going to put aspen first in our labels and ponderosa pine second. Since aspen is said first and 12 is said first, the number 12 goes with aspen. Ponderosa pine is said second. 16 is said second, so 16 goes with ponderosa. Okay. Now that I have the label set up and the original ratio, I'm now going to continue. If there are 48 aspen trees, how many ponderosa pine trees are there? Okay, so we're going to put the 48 next to the aspen. See how the labels are telling me where to put my numbers. So 48 goes next to aspen, and the X goes underneath. Okay, so now we're going to figure it out. Remember, we're only going to figure it out where we see 2 numbers. So we're going to ask ourselves, how do we get from 12 to 48? Okay, we multiply by 4. Whatever we do to the top, we must also do to the bottom. So 16 times 4 is 64. So the value of x is 64. So now we're going to go to the next slide here, and we're going to enter in our 64. And the label's already put there for it. 64 Ponderosa pine trees. All right, let's do another one. It says a survey found that 3 out of 8 students, 3 out of 8 prefer virtual learning. I'm going to stop there. Anytime they don't give you two labels, the 3 is going to be the top part of your ratio and 8 is going to be the bottom part, because it's almost like a fraction. It's your part and your whole. We know that only part of the students prefer virtual learning. And then we're taking our part out of our total amount of students. So our prefer virtual would be the first number we see, which would be 3, out of a total of 8 students. If this says 3 out of 8, the 3 and the 8 are your original ratio. They have to stay together. Now it says in a group of 96 students, how many would you expect to prefer virtual learning? Well, if it says 96 students, it doesn't say anything about what they prefer. So our 96 would go to the total, and our x would go above the 96. All right, now let's figure out the value of x. So we're going to have to figure out our scale factor. So we're going to ask, how do we get from 8 to 96? Okay, we multiply by 12. So if our scale factor is multiplying by 12 on the bottom, we then have to multiply by 12 on the top. And 3 times 12 is 36. So the value of x is 36. So now we're going to go to our next question, our next slide, and we're going to fill in 36. Okay, one last one. All right, it says Grant plays 2 games of Among Us in 30 minutes. If he continued at this rate, how many games would he play in 2 hours? Okay, remember I told you, from just our first sentence alone, we're going to be able to get our labels, and we're going to be able to get our original ratio, right? So first what we see is we're comparing games to minutes. So I'm going to put games first since I see games first. And then I'm going to put minutes second since I see the minutes second. Okay, it says 2 games. So we're going to put the 2 with the games. And then it says 30 minutes. So we're going to put the 30 with the minutes. Now it says, if he continued at this rate, how many games would he play in 2 hours? Notice hours is not a label, but hours can be converted to minutes. Remember, 1 hour equals 60 minutes. If we want 2 hours, then we would just do 60 plus 60, which is 120 minutes. Or you could simply do 60 times 2, which is still 120 minutes. Anyhow, we're going to put the 120 next to the minutes, and we're going to put our x up top. All right, now that our proportion is set up, we are going to solve and put our answer on the next slide. So we're going to ask ourselves, how do we get from 30 to 120? And we're going to multiply by 4, because 30 times 4 is 120. So then whatever we do to the bottom, we're also going to do to the top. And 2 times 4 is 8. So the value of x equals 8. So now we're going to go to the next slide. And we're going to plug in 8 games.